As the saying goes, north, south, east, west, home is the best. And home is where your heart is. Now for me, my heart is here in Nigeria because this is my home. And I celebrate my identity as a Nigerian. Would you rather be in a country? Would you rather be elsewhere than Nigeria? Well, I'd rather be in a country where my voice can be heard and not shouted. My actions or inactions are not predicated on decrees or draconian laws. A country where you are part of the democratic process that determines who governs you. Let's take a break from that. Let me take you back to June 12. This year, it is a weekday, a Monday, and Nigerians will be observing it as a national public holiday to commemorate what has become our longest established democratic tradition, Democracy Day. It will be the fourth time, I hope I'm not mistaken, that Democracy Day will be observed on June 12. And that's in honor of not just the personality, late MKO Abiola, but also the democratic ideals encapsulated in events that shaped June 12, 1993. Now, until June 6, 2018, Nigerians upheld the tradition of commemorating May 29 as our official Democracy Day. It was on May 29, I'm sure you know, 1999, that the military handed over power to an elected civilian government, a process that marked the beginning of what has become our longest uninterrupted democratic transition in the history of Nigeria. Now, in 2018, President Buhari thought it wise to declare June 12 as the new Democracy Day in memory of the presumed winner of the June 12, 1993 general election, late MKO Abiola. And today, Nigeria is considered as one of the largest democracies in the world. Now, that position did not come on a platter of gold. It took years of military spells in coups, agitations, and violent protests. Let's recall some of those major events preceding 1993. 6 years after Nigeria gained her independence from the British rule, that's in 1960, the first military coup was staged, disrupting the First Republic, which started in 1963. It was followed by 3 years of civil war, then intermittent takeovers, military takeovers. We're all familiar with the details of those events. That's not the focus of our conversation today. Now, I don't know what your mindset is about Nigeria's 23 years of sustained democracy, but the mindset of many people I have talked to or spoken with about this country's democratic trajectory is that we've got more to celebrate than not. What's your opinion? On Late Edition this week, we reflect on our 23 years of sustained democracy. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. Thank you for joining me. Now, I'll be joined first by Malam Garba Shehu. First, he's an accomplished journalist, capable and able publicist, a lucid, incisive, and factual writer. Indeed, your ideal gentleman of the press. He's a technocrat and a politician. Now, don't ask me how he's able to combine those qualities with being a politician. I don't know if the qualities complement. But Malam Garba is passionately patriotic about the present and the future of Nigeria, what and who he represents. An altruistic and philanthropic person in his own ways. He likes to give back to society. That I'm going to hold him to when we end this program. But of course, In doing that, he set up a clinic in his family home where he bought, which he bought over in Dutse. Now, put in an 8-year stint at his alma mater, that's the Bayero University, as a part-time lecturer at the Mass Communication Department. That's between 1991 and 1998. And this is the catch. He had no pay, he did not get any reward, but for that, he received a commendation from the University Senate. Now, Malam Garuba Shehu attended, of course, the famous Barawa College, Zaria, as I said earlier, Bayero University, Kano, and the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He holds a master's degree in mass communication, started his career as a journalist with the NTA, surprise, worked at the Triumph newspapers in Kano, and rose to become editor or managing director / editor-in-chief. He was also NUJ chairman, Kano State Council, then later President, Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thereafter, Malam Garuba served as the head of public relations at the Aluminium Smelter Company of Nigeria, ASCON. In 2003, Malam Garuba was appointed as special assistant to the president, then Media and Publicity Office of the Vice President then. Now, 12 years later, in 2015, he returned to the villa, this time as Senior Special Assistant, Media and Publicity. Malam Garuba Shehu is now serving his second term at the villa and has generally been described as a quintessential presidential spokesperson. We're also being joined this week on Late Edition by Professor Joy Ngozi Ezilo. She's a distinguished law professor, Emeritus Dean of Law, University of Nigeria, former United Nations Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children. Professor Ezilo is a versatile legal scholar, civil society activist, an authority in the field of international human rights, especially on the rights of women and children. She was a former Commissioner for Gender and Social Development in Enugu State, a federal delegate to the National Political Reform Conference, and served also as a member of the Governing Council, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, between 2012 and 2015, and Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies between 2018 and 2021. Professor Joy Ezilo has worked in over 100 countries across all regions of the world. Now, in the last 2 decades, she has organized and facilitated workshops and training on human rights, gender, human trafficking, rule of law, access to justice, administration of justice, governance, peace, and conflict. Professor Joy Ezilo has an enviable public service record and has served and continues to serve on the board of several national and international organizations. She has, of course, received several national and international awards, including Officer of the Order of the Niger, OON, in recognition of her outstanding contributions in the area of nation building, legal scholarship, advocacy, civil society movement, and community service. She's a member of the United Nations Civil Society Advisory Board on Prevention of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, and is currently the Deputy Chairperson of the African Women's Leadership Network, Nigerian chapter. It's my pleasure to welcome both of you, Malam Garuba Shehu, Professor Joy Ezilo. Thank you for joining me on Late Edition this week. So let me start from here. Malam Garuba Shehu, good to have you. It's your first time on Late Edition, and we're talking about democracy and democratic principles. And first of all, let me even start on it. I described you as a gentleman, which you are, and a politician. How are you able to do that compliment? How are you able to hold those two qualities?
Well, you know, from the beginning, of course, I thought the elaborate and, you know, introduction was such that it would raise so much expectation of the wisdom that would proceed from my lips, and which perhaps may not even be there. So therefore, that expectation has been raised, and I hope that I don't fail your audiences. it's not difficult to reconcile the two, because journalism is governed by ethics as other professions. The law, we have a distinguished professor on the panel, medical profession, surveyors, engineering, they all have, their codes of ethics. So when you practice, are you able to practice along those narrow lines? So then if you are, then you qualify as a professional.
You know why I ask?
No.
Because it's difficult for a journalist, a journalist who is guided, as you said, by ethics, to be a politician, and our, perception about politics and politicians, what they are. But that's by the way, we'll get to talk about that later. We have more to celebrate, seems to be the message that's coming out from the villa as we mark July 27. Talk to us.
Yeah, certainly there is so much to celebrate, because, democracy by its own concept, the philosophy of democracy is such that it is a self-cleansing process. So it is never a perfect, in fact, people say it is messy, but it is self-correcting. So what it does is that it gives the national population not only a chance to participate, therefore it is not only participatory, but it helps you to fine-tune and cleanse the process of governance, the process of the emergence of leaders, and all of that. If you choose a thief, and for 4 years he's been doing nothing but taking from the treasury and pocketing it, I think the voting population will be silly to put that person back in office. But assuming they do so, they cannot repeat it the third time. So this is the beauty of it. When you have had 23 years of unbroken practice of democracy, it then means that we are perfecting the process. The ongoing registration of new voters will end June 30th, and ANEC would be announcing the final figure. When we approach 2019 election, they announced a voting population of about 84 million Nigerians. I believe this year we will top 100 million, and that is enormous. And we don't know what the statistics will say, but my sense is that maybe up to 1/3 of the voting population in 2023 would be new voters, young Nigerians who didn't even know what military rule was like, because they were too tiny, too small to even appreciate. In fact, they were not even there when we had the last military administration. So therefore, we are perfecting the system. We are building it up. It's maturing. And so this is the huge gain as we celebrate.
You just said something. By 2023, we may have more higher, population of voters who probably will not, have hindsight history, of military interventions and all that. So who are those really celebrating? If this generation of people don't even understand what we're talking about, so they probably would not see. All they know now is what is happening.
And so that is the nice thing about it, because then you are bringing up, so the normative culture of the population is democratic, is increasingly is democratized.
Okay.
And so therefore, it strengthens democracy as a system of government, because by the time you keep going on and on and on, it gets to the point when not only military rule will be alien, in fact it will have become unknown to the population, of Nigeria's vote. So therefore, then people will be more willing to defend that which they know and that which they have found to be beneficial. That has the process that has shaped, their own life, their own thinking. For you, that's a major success. Oh, absolutely, it is. And then, don't forget then, democracy, the norms of democracy are such that, the freedoms that the constitutions allow. Of course, some of these rights and freedoms are God-given themselves. No human being, whether constitution, cannot take away your right to life, property, and things like that. But that thing then is that we are bringing up young people who know nothing other than democracy and who will be willing to defend it, because free speech, for instance, look at the digital transformation of society. Everyone with the telephone at hand, they can broadcast, they can do messaging, newspaper, everything. So you can't take that away from. We have gone too far, ahead of the past.
What as the president, speaks to Nigerians, I'm just wondering, what is really going on in his mind, given 7 years, leading Nigerians this past 7 years in this democracy. What do you think is the president's greatest, the president's feeling of fulfillment?
Well, don't forget that the president is elected not only to do infrastructure, electricity, water, roads, and bridges, which is doing exceedingly well, but also to safeguard democracy, to nurture it as a system of government. And the president must be feeling top of the world that coming this far, democracy in Nigeria has gained stronger roots. It remains unshaken. It is on firm standing, especially at a time when, tragically, we have seen the re-emergence of a coups d'etat in particularly West Africa, and against which, the president has been very outspoken and has led not only West Africa, but the entire African continent to denounce coups and to push for very harsh sanctions that isolate errant administrations and in order to, make coup d'etat on the continent something that does not reward anyone in any good way. So the president has done his duty to the nation, and he has protected and nurtured this democracy.
A lot of Nigerians listen to Mr. President's broadcast, and it's, of course, President's broadcast has become a tradition again, whether it was May 29, whether it was June 12. And Nigerians seem to be saying, this broadcast, what do you think the President's broadcast on June 12, how would it, impact? How would it affect Nigerians? Do you think it's something that Nigerians that would assuage, any kind of ill feelings about today?
Well, I think that rather than ill feelings about June 12, President's choice of June 12 as Nation's Democracy Day is a curative measure. And so therefore, and I think this is perhaps one of the best decisions he has undertaken in the office, one of the best received decisions, because, look, over the years, successive administration had pretended that they had resolved the June 12 crisis. But the truth is that June 12 crisis still festered, even after you had a situation in which presidency of Nigeria was delivered on a platter to the aggrieved section of the country. And that section of the country, or represented by a leader, served out 8 years of presidency. He didn't cure anything. That bitterness, that feeling was still underlying, the nation's, political landscape. Until this day then came when the president said, look, what are we waiting for? And he said, bring forward Abiola's family and all of the champions of democracy. Gani Fawehimi, Ambassador Baba Gana Kingibe, beside MK Abiola. In effect, Abiola was, in his absence, in his death, crowned as the president of Nigeria.
So it was basically the president's speech was, or should I say, is basically curative.
It's curative, yes.
Okay, so let me pause a while. I've talked to you for quite a while now. Let me bring in Professor Joy Ezilo, who is joining me via Zoom from Enugu. Professor Ezilo, Malam Garuba has talked about the message of, we have more to celebrate that seems to be coming from the villa. But I just want you to also to evaluate it from your civil society perspective, and of course with your experience as an inclusion advocate of inclusion. What is it when we talk about unbroken democracy? Unbroken, I'm sure a lot of you have different understanding of what it means. If we say unbroken, are we referring to just the fact that we have not had any military intervention? Because in other parts of our lives, a lot of people feel broken. And then he also talked about the normative culture of the voting population, which is growing as another major impact or achievement. And the fact that, by the time you know it, we'll probably have a new generation of Nigerians who probably won't tolerate or won't even have any desire for any kind of dictatorship.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And then I want to also say thank you to Shehu Garuba. It's really, there is a lot to celebrate. The fact that we've had this 23 years unbroken democracy, definitely it's something that we could be proud of, because some didn't believe, especially externally, that Nigeria, given the long military rule, will be able to have these more than 2 decades of democracy. But then, of course, if you also look at progress, there are several ways or indicators for measuring success, and then how far so far with our democracy and the brand of democracy we practice. I think the democratic culture, we are still not there. And in terms of deepening this our nascent democracy, there is a lot of room for improvement. Today, we are at a critical junction or crossroads, faced with myriads of problems or challenges, of course, at all levels, that's including human security, both physical security challenges, economic hardship, there is hunger, there is anger, and democracy, of course, is supposed to be one of the basic principles. And as a professor of law, I know is the sanctity of life, protection of life and property is paramount and is imperative, is overriding. And today in Nigeria, life is so cheap. At times I'm like, how did we get there? That people can abrogate others' life and just kill people wantonly? Do they know something? What is really wrong? Because it doesn't appear that we have gotten to the root causes. Yes, we can say, yes, terrorists, we can say agitations, we can say sectarian violence and all of that. But it's not enough, to really understand the ugly phenomenon of what is going on. And for us to be able to deal with it, because life has become so cheap. You step out, whether you go to church or mosque or market, you don't know who will pay the ultimate price. People who joined train will have said, in 1 hour, I'll be there. People who went to church in St. Francis, church will have said, maybe somebody will say, take your breakfast. I say, no, let me go to church, I'll come back. So these things you can no longer take for granted. Freedom from fear and want. That is the human security aspect. That it has been totally turned. And how do we deal with that? Because it looks like also with the same anger that voters and young people are all trying to get their PVC to say, really, we need to have a better life, just put it that way, to take certain things for granted. If it's water that you used to have, you come, all of a sudden you see that the taps are dry. And when we talk about this, let me be very clear. I am talking about all levels of government, because sometimes, because we over-centralize, including power, everybody, when we talk, we are looking at Abuja, we are looking at the federal government, but we are forgetting that the government closest to us is so unaccountable, is so inefficient, is so ineffective, and is not serving the people. And democracy is about the people, is about inclusion, it's about responsiveness to people's needs and their yearnings. And the government closest may be the most reckless, the most insensitive in terms of providing the basic means of livelihood and livelihood sustainability for the people. And when you look at the demand side, the followership, yes, we look at leadership and we can say, yes, leadership is a problem of Nigeria, but it's not just leadership at all levels, leadership, but followership has also a lot to do with it, because we've allowed our democracy to be impacted by primordial considerations, issues around where you come from, what religion, what gender, things that, we could have looked and say, look, I just want good government. I just want to take things for granted. I just want to sleep and wake up without bothering whether something terrible will happen to the person overnight.
Yes.
So and anybody that can give it to you, you wouldn't be struggling about where they come from. But the politics we play in Nigeria today is all about where people come from, and also because that has become also the quickest access to money.
Prof,
so now the price is very high.
The lament is written all over your face, but I really, if you look at, in our culture, a 23-year-old is not considered as, fully mature. I mean, in Igbo culture, for instance, where you are in the cultures of the Igbos, a 23-year-old will not be allowed or will not be advised to even, live alone. That 23-year-old is still, being nurtured. So it's still nascent. Our democracy is still nascent. We're still emerging. And so the picture you paint, the gloomy picture you paint, don't you think it might be too hasty? Or are you saying we haven't even made any, we haven't even taken any step forward in terms of, deepening our democracy? I said, there are things that you might have said. But yes, I will. Yes, please,
Okay.
just hold your thought. When we come back, we just take a short break. Funny enough, we've taken half of our time. When we come back, Professor Joy Uzilo, you speak to that. You're watching Late Edition. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You can't fight piracy. You can't fight a war.
Therefore, you don't claim your rights.
The challenge I see is in the fiscal.
We have to wait until we have a problem.
See, the problem with those who speak on behalf of themselves and the country is that they should have facts. I'm speaking now as Minister for Transport.
For you to become economically independent, you must have to curtail the level of importation of other people's products and services.
How rich you are, you can't bring certain vehicle into the country.
There's no competitiveness within the state.
I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back. This is Late Edition, and we are evaluating our 23 years of sustained democracy. I won't say unbroken, I will say sustained democracy, because we've been able to sustain it. We've had successful, smooth transitions from one civilian to another, which is kudos. Professor Joy Uzilo, back to you.
thank you very much. We've made some progress. And when you look at Nigeria, it's full of contradictions, especially in the private sector, with regard to even e-business, even this phone banking, internet. We've advanced in so many areas, and then there are areas that you want to see that advancement that are not even rocket science, then we are failing completely. Look at the issue of importation of oil and gas, fuel, petroleum products. This is not a rocket science. Refining fuel is not a rocket science. It's so primitive. And it really speaks to our incapacitation of Nigeria that we should be talking about importing fuel for taking crude oil out of the country, bringing it back, when everybody can even refine fuel in their backyard. Even in the Biafran war, people refine fuel, So why should we be at that stage in this our life and subsidizing corruption, for example? And then, those are the big questions and big elephant in the room. The issue of power, the issue of free fall of Naira, which when you look at the Naira, for example, I was in South Africa recently, and I went to South Africa for the first time in 1998, and I was taking some students to some competition in Maputo, and we stopped over in South Africa. And then I recall clearly that the rand was 9 rand to $1, because not only did I change money, we had issues with our flight. Nigerian embassy had to come and help us. So now down the line, I went to South Africa just last month. The rand to $1 is 15.4. And over the years, I go like twice, sometime once, because I do visiting professorship again there. When you look, it has not gone beyond, it's still under 20 after more than 20 years. Can you say the same of Nigerian Naira? Can you say the same of Nigerian economy? Can you say the same about development status of Nigeria? In the university where I went to teach, I looked at the facility. I was so depressed throughout my stay. For the few days, I just actually took an early leave to come back home. I'm like, why is this so? Why is such a huge difference within the country? I know, yes, we may not be producing as much as they are, producing, and then their rates may be, I understand some of those issues. But there are ones that to explain them will be difficult. And it's about successive government, and that's not like saying it's not a blame. Definitely you can put on any one government. But we just have to be determined as a people to from where the other person stops.
Yes.
Stop playing politics, because we don't want
my
politics.
sense is that much as you have very strong points there, and I do agree with you to a large extent, the tragedy of loss of life, whether in churches or on the streets or the kids, is just embarrassing for the country, and I wish that this will be, will go away with the wave of the hand. But I think we have to contextualize a lot of the things that we are witnessing. I'm not saying that it is defensible that people can be shot and killed in places of worship and on the streets and all of that. But when we look at the entire crime environment, say in West Africa, when African Union met the year before, they determined that if care was not taken, Islamic State would have a nation of its own somewhere in West Africa. Mm. And by that, they were referring to the fact that about 2/3 of Mali was under the control of terrorists. And established evidence that training takes place there, and then people acquire weapons, and then they cross the Sahel, and they come over and they create a lot of this damage. They rob people, they kill. I'm not justifying all of these things, but the emphasis, government will not help anybody in dealing with this matter. The citizens must realize there is a duty for every one of us. She mentioned the thing about inability to refine petroleum products or to supply them. When she spoke of those old times, they probably didn't have a situation in which maybe crude oil pipeline going to Kaduna from Port Harcourt would be broken 150 times in 1 month. Or the fact that people would unlawfully link up to petroleum product pipelines, in one particular instance, up to 4 kilometers from the pipeline to the residents. A lot of these things sabotage. She mentioned power. The Minister of Power was over there in Akwa Ibom. A tower was bombed and it plunged the country into darkness. We are sabotaging our own country. And South Africans, they're doing well in many of these respects. Do they bomb electricity towers? Do they bomb pipelines? The theft of crude oil, which before now, now this thing is being eliminated. At some point, it reduced production of sale of crude oil by the government of Nigeria to about 500,000 barrels per day, from the approved limit of about 2 million barrels per day. Today, as we speak, we've been allowed up to 1.8 million by OPEC. We are not able to attain our targets because people are stealing. And when they steal this crude, it's not as if we are foreigners or whatever. No. If there is no community support for the kind of things that we are seeing, these things will not be taking place. So we've got to change as a people.
You talk about the fact that, you know, these vices are being perpetrated. People are stealing. People are vandalizing, you know, public infrastructure, and they're continuing to do that. Now, isn't that also because those people have not, you know, go scot-free? When they've not been arrested, or when they're arrested, they are not prosecuted. When they're prosecuted.
We have expectations of law enforcement that in many cases are simply not realizable or not realistic. Look, these policemen and the soldiers, they don't come from the moon. They are members of our own society. And by the way, it is wrong. It is possible that my brother, maybe from Kano, is somewhere serving in the creeks in Bayelsa as a policeman. He probably, before that posting, had no idea what a creek was like, coming from the dry lands of North. I'm saying that every law enforcement agent needs community support. People need information and intelligence, because at the end of it all, it is members of the community. We know ourselves, and we know who is. Look at what the Borno people did with the Boko Haram. Borno people turned against, and they were turning them over to law enforcement. And that had the effect of curtailing in an enormous way. Yes, there was firepower, but there was also community support for eliminating the menace of the Boko Haram people. And this is what the president is appealing all the time. Communities have just got to speak up and expose those elements within us, because they live within our own communities. When the military prepares to send aircraft to bomb, you know, targets, before the aircraft take off, our members of the community will have found bandits and terrorists out there in the forest. Get ready, they are coming to you. And aircraft go over several distances, and they discover that targets that have been established by intelligence have simply disappeared, because we are not doing what patriotism demands that we should do, you know, for our own.
Who should be held responsible for that?
Well, I'm saying that as a people, we should introspect.
Okay.
We should introspect, and how do we now? It's not just about one man, Muhammadu Buhari, sitting in villa to solve all this problem. Everyone has a role.
Okay, Professor Zilo, I'll be very fast now. You know, we have in our various contributions talked about the criteria for, or the benchmark, you know, for evaluating our process, our progress so far. I think we're touching on those benchmarks here and there. But let's look at, you know, the benchmark for political participation, which is really, you know, one of the important, you know, aspects of a democratic, you know, principle. So far, how well do you think we have done in liberalizing the political space and, of course, widening the scope for more participation?
Thank you. In that area, I think Nigeria is quite robust and a very fascinating place. But at the same time, I'm disturbed that the political ideologies is yet to create. Again, I think that in terms of civic education, political parties are not doing enough. And in fact, one of the comic relief as I was watching the APC convention was to also see that delegates couldn't even write out the names of those they were even void votes. And I'm like, at this critical level, and to become a delegate in a presidential election, and then after traveling all the way, we have void votes because people don't even have how to vote and vote correctly and have the names, and at that level, so you can imagine. So it means also a lot of work has been done by civil society, but civil society cannot go it alone, and neither will civil society ever replace government. No way. So government is there, and political parties are there, and they're supposed to be part of civil actors. They will do their bit. Nigeria is huge, but the political parties ultimately have the task of doing political education. People don't even understand their party's constitution, manifestos. You can't tell party A and B what is the difference except for the characters and the personalities that are there. So in that regard, yes, everybody is free. The freedom of expression, association, people are enjoying it, and they join different political parties the same way they cross carpet, because there is no ideology has not yet crystallized. You can't say, this is what I know this party for, or this is what. And in parliament, I often tell people go to parliament because they have a passion for something. If you find someone like me in parliament, I'll be talking human rights, I'll be talking about, women's rights, I'll be a human rights defender, I'll be talking on trafficking, on migration. I'll have things that I'm passionate about, that will be my life, that will be my, my breath, but we don't have that kind of background, yet for most politicians. For most politicians, is access for power, and power for personalization of power, and power for privatization of our commonwealth, and then also power to be abused for some. And but I listened to you when Garvashik started with the ethics, and ethical. I believe there are ethical politicians, and there are those who are decent, and still do what they believe in, without doubt, and say, like we watched the president, he said, I don't have a favorite, and then it showed out. He said, just let this tribe. I don't want to anoint this person or that person. That's really, very, strong and commendable personality that you can say, yes, this is this. I don't want to interfere. I want this democracy to flow. And he did. I mean, it's amazing, because you can hardly find that at all levels of government with the governors. Everyone annoys their successor. Even local government chairman want to impact on their successor. Even in the university where we are, they didn't want to get their successor. At all levels, it has become a Nigerian thing, and then we the areas where we need to talk about or get capacitation, we are not dealing with that. But with our democracy, there is something that I went to India once, and we were looking at the Electoral Commission. I saw the building where the Electoral Commission is, that oversees over 800. India is the world's largest democracy. And I looked at the electronic voting machine. In fact, there were only, I think, 3 electoral commissioners. And then I look at the bogus nature, big government, the bogus nature of our own structure and electoral system. And I'm beginning to wonder, I'm beginning also to become skeptical about the brand of democracy we practice. It is not pinned to any government. What I mean is entirely the brand and the constitutional democracy we practice, and the cost of that democracy. And whether that cannot also go into assisting us to have sustainable democracy.
I guess, Prof, you have made so many points that are very well made and quite intelligently done so. And coming from where you are, I mean, from civil society, and so therefore a pressure group. It's understandable, because you are pushed by the urgency to see things done, and especially given your exposure, having seen all parts of the world and how advanced they are. But again, you did say something yourself. We have to wait. I think we have to be patient to allow our institutional support structures of democracy themselves must be strong, must evolve. And institutions such as the civil society as are leading, so that some of the things that people take for granted, before this time, you cannot even hold anybody to account. You can't ask a minister a question. Now, it may appear to be a small thing, but today as we speak, There is no minister of the Nigerian government that cannot be asked to come to parliament. And then they will be asked questions about money. We gave you money, what did you do with it? If the money is missing, how did it get lost? Under the military, you couldn't ask anyone question. You would be shot or arrested. So we are making, and I think it is gradually that these things will evolve. And as we continue to push, and I like what you're doing, the civil society, group. And on the issue of the quality of democracy itself, again, it is not something that would come overnight. Yes, let's aspire to be like America, 200 years of democracy. And we're just 23 years now. But the thing is that even for the United States of America, democracy is evolving.
They had their own challenges.
In the United Kingdom, democracy, in fact, UK doesn't even have a written constitution. It's evolving every day. So the thing then is that continue to push for changes that are beneficial to the public, and this thing, the absence of ideology and all, it will pass. Maybe not during our own lifetimes. But the thing is that human beings are not made to be silly in all their life. As I said from the beginning, if you vote somebody who doesn't perform, and you repeat the same mistake second time, the third time you do the same mistake, you can't continue doing so. It will get to the point you say, enough is enough. And then you break it, and then you get somebody else that can replace that unwanted parliamentarian or governor or council chairman or even president, so that they continue to get better with time. The UK, for instance, some of the biggest scandals that can bring down a sitting prime minister, a sex scandal, for instance, can bring down a government in Europe today. In this country, someone stood before the parliament. When the video had gone all around and all of the scandals had been shared, and I said, so what? It's my life. And he got on with it. So we have to change. And I agree with her. Quality of not only the ideology, but the quality of representation must continue to improve with time.
Okay, just both of you will. I know, Professor Izilo, I know that touched you, and I know you want to say something to what Madam Garba just said. But again, Madam Garba, I know that when the president decided, to take that very decisive step of, moving that tradition forward by, changing the date of Democracy Day, May 29th to June 12th. I'm wondering what really motivated that, the change of mind, that decision, because the ideals for which June 12th, stood, you could talk about. At the time, Muslim ticket, didn't matter. Tribe didn't matter. Age didn't matter. But 23 years down our democracy, all these things matter now. Or don't you think so?
They do matter to the vocal few. Segments of society that are outspoken would always look at the level of existence. Nigerians, whether anyone likes to hear this or not, they're basically the same. I don't want to talk about crime, because for every major kidnapping or robbery incidents that are broken by the law enforcement, the most likely indication you will have is that there is perhaps a representation of virtually every religion or ethnic group in the country. But even at the level of decent survival, the challenges that we all face, whether high cost of living and challenges as they relate to security in the circumstances we are in, they are not discriminating of either this ethnic group or that ethnic group or this religion, or we all suffer in the same way, and we embrace one another in terms of these situations, and we shed tears for one another, and then we move on as a people. My own sense, I'm not giving up on this country. I want to believe that the ideals represented by June 12 1993 were the highest it could get for any democracy. Is it achievable? I believe it is achievable. I'm not making a case for any kind of ticket in terms of color or ideology, but what I'm saying is that there are a lot of aspirations of Nigerians that were captured by June 12, 1993 and pushed by the agency of Moshood Abiola candidacy. May God bless his soul. I believe that someone can do that. It can be recreated.
Professor Joy Ezilo, what's your take on that?
Yeah, just like, it's true we have to first, I'm a very hopeful person. I will never give up on Nigeria. I will keep hope alive because, and for some of us, it's too late to think of checking out. You see young people in droves, everybody want to check out. I believe in this country. I believe that we can get it to work. And I will continue to make the necessary sacrifice. And I agree that citizens have also a lot to do, even in terms of the security that you mentioned, community policing, the issue of informants even within, and love of country and not being patriotic. I think those are the values that we don't have as a people. You know, I recall sitting next to a person, a white man on the plane, and he said, "You have beautiful people, beautiful country. But how come they don't love their country?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, like, if you have a contract of 10 million and someone, you're doing it and someone will come and say, put it 100 million, or even times it by 100. And he said, I mean, it was like, this is amazing. It's mind-blowing. If people who love their country wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing, don't even say put 10%. It's no longer that. You know, but I think it will come. We need to start early, catch them young, and so that these young ones, I'm afraid some of them are already corrupted and doing all kinds of corruption at their level. You know, even in the university, you see students also, taking money from another student and defrauding them and all kinds of things. So we need to fight this headlong. And within our democratic space, we are happy that people have that freedom. You know, we are enjoying it. The difference is clear between the democracy we practice and then what happened in the past. But I just want to say that as we really work towards deepening Nigeria's democracy, it's important that the important principles of democracy, especially that those democratic institutions are deliberately and carefully, nurtured so that they can survive any leadership, in fact. Because if you look at, not even every democracy is even on a bit on trial. Even American democracy, saw what happened with January 6th, why they are probing. Probably the ability to probe and punish that and hold people to account is what may be missing in ours. And they never forgive, like even in United Kingdom, you see what is still happening with their president. They never forgive because they will continue to probe and investigate and do all of that. So we need that power of questioning. We need also that to get back those compassion and leave out those things that divide us, and emphasize it less and less. At our level as civil society, I mean, that's what we do. There is no part of Nigeria I won't go and I won't be very comfortable.
Professor Joy Ezilo, thank you. I just give Madam Garuba just 30 seconds to give his Democracy Day message to Nigerians. In 30 seconds.
There are things that we easily take for granted. The right to choose who to lead us. Nigerians should hold on to that because look at what happened with, and I'm saying this because we are APC, what we did with our convention. From bottom to top. This opportunity is not available, you'd be surprised, to many Africans, to many countries in the world. That right to choose who to lead you. And I think that it's a unique gift of democracy. We should cherish it and hold on and use it well.
Thank you, Madam Garuba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President, Media and Publicity. Professor Joy Ngozi Ezilo, Constitutional Lawyer, Emeritus Dean of Law, University of Nigeria. It's always a pleasure to have you on my program. Professor Joy Ezilo, thank you, and continue doing the great work that you're doing. Do have beautiful Democracy Day. Please go out and celebrate. It's great to be a Nigerian. Malam Garba Shehu.
Thank you very much.
I'm a diehard Nigerian, no matter what. And as you say, we will uphold the sanctity of our country. Malam Garba Shehu, thank you, and do have a wonderful Democracy Day.
Thank you.
All right, that's it from me, Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. It's Democracy Day here in Nigeria. From me and my production crew, we wish you successful celebrations. Bye-bye.